top story at this hour. While Tesla's drive into India gets firmed up, Elon Musk's Starlink is already gazing at the Indian skies, and it seems it has two partners vying for it. One, of course, is Bharti Airtel, now with Reliance Jio as well. That's right, hours after Bharti Airtel signed an agreement with Elon Musk-led SpaceX to offer high-speed internet services under Starlink to its customers in India, market leader Reliance Jio is now following suit. Remember, Airtel is also the single largest shareholder with 21.2% share in Starlink's rival firm Eutelsat OneWeb. Now, meanwhile, OneWeb has received permission to start operations in India and is waiting for spectrum allocation to roll out services, but Starlink will still await regulatory approvals to sell its services in India. So while it has already signed a deal with Airtel and Jio, a regulatory approval is still awaited. Details of the Reliance Jio Starlink deal are also awaited. Under the Bharti Airtel Pact, Airtel and SpaceX will explore offering Starlink equipment at Airtel's retail stores and Starlink services via Airtel to business customers. Opportunities to connect communities, schools and health centers, among many others, in even the most distant rural parts of India is also on the offering. A statement from Airtel said that Airtel and SpaceX will also explore how Starlink could help expand and enhance Airtel network as well as SpaceX ability to utilize and benefit from Airtel's ground network infrastructure and other capabilities in India. Remember, just last year, Sunil Bharti Mittal at Indian Mobile Congress had joined his rival Mukesh Ambani-led Jio to make a strong case for satellite companies paying license fee as well as buying airwaves for their telecom services, just like legacy companies do, in a bid to create a level playing field. He had said that satellite companies who have ambitions to come into urban areas serving retail customers just need to pay the telecom license like everyone else, and they are bound to do the same as per conditions as telecom operators in India. Now, SpaceX and other SATCOM players have opposed the auction route in the past for spectrum allocation. Musk had first termed the demand made by Jio for shunning sector regulatory TRAI's consultation paper on satellite broadband being allocated and not auctioned as unprecedented. Now, after Mittal's speech in the presence of Prime Minister Modi at the India Mobile Congress, Musk asked if it was too much trouble to allow Starlink to provide internet services in India. Now, in the same month, Airtel also asked telecom regulator TRAI to price the satellite spectrum in a manner that addresses the concerns on a level playing field between terrestrial operators and satellite operators offering services directly to customers in urban areas as well as retail customers. Now, Starlink has been pitching for allocation of spectrum at less than 1% of the adjusted gross revenue, the AGR, which is revenue earned from the sale of telecom services. Telecom operators are charging 8% of their AGR as license fee every year, and spectrum charges are separate every year, remember, besides paying, of course, upfront amount for getting the rights of their usage. So the two big questions that now emerge is, how does Starlink coming to India impact you, the consumer? And will you be able to likely spoil between the two choices of two telecom players in the country who will now be offering Starlink satellite and using perhaps their own platform to do so? Joining me to help figure out what this really means for you, the people, as well as for the telecom sector in India is Kumardeep Banerjee. Kumardeep, thank you very much for taking time out. I want you to first simplify this for us. How can Airtel and Jio both sign a similar pact to get Starlink to India? What's really happening here? We heard Airtel and by the way of a press release yesterday detailing how they have tied up with Starlink. This morning, we're also hearing that Reliance Jio is also tying up with Starlink. How will it all, figure out in the larger scheme of things?
Okay, I'll give you. There are. Apparently it seems that there are conflicting interests at play, and I will come to it. I will park the second point for a bit. But essentially, what we understand is that these are, in sort of franchise deals where both Airtel and Reliance Jio would be able to, sell Starlink equipment from their stores. What I read also was that Jio has also mentioned that they would also help in installation of Starlink equipment. So so if we are given to understand that, then it means that it's basically a hardware kind of a deal where the services would be provided by Starlink itself. Having said that, there is another let's say anomaly here, given the fact that both Reliance Jio and Airtel have got permissions to start their own satellite communication services in the country. And so far, both of them have had conflicting views with what Starlink or even Jeff Bezos's Kuiper network intends to do, wherein both, as you rightly pointed out a short while back, that both Airtel and Jio are in favor of having spectrum auctions and a level playing field with terrestrial networks is what they have been saying, except for the last or beginning of this month, Mr. Sunil Bharti Mittal during the Mobile World Congress has indicated that this is not the time to fight with the satellite operators, and both terrestrial and satellite operators should be collaborating, perhaps an indication of where the future was leading to. But having said that, both of them have within their web of services or within their entire spectrum of services would also have their own satellite communications, which would be directly competing with Starlinks. So it would be an interesting interesting space to watch out for, given that three large players are now is sort of in a mesh with each other and trying to offer services. And what I feel would be the cost of services is what will determine who will get a headway. There would be regulatory challenges. There are regulatory challenges,
and it is services. I want to talk about cost of services in just a bit, because that would be important and interesting to all the consumers who are hoping to perhaps use Starlink satellite internet going forward. But let me first begin by understanding the regulatory challenges as you were coming to. All of this is, of course, subject to TRAI approval and telecom regulators' approval going forward. What's going to hold back TRAI? What's really holding back TRAI from giving its nod? Because we've been hearing about Starlink's entry into India has been met with a lot of regulatory hurdles in the past. One, of course, is the fact that established players in India were against the differing fee, the AGR issue that continued to be one of the bone of contentions, and that perhaps was something that TRAI and Telecom Authority was mulling over. But what are the regulatory challenges as it stands today, or are there no regulatory challenges and perhaps this is going to happen very, very shortly?
There are a bunch of regulatory challenges. First of all, Shweta, you are well aware of it that telecom sector is one of the most heavily regulated sectors in this country, and it has always been. And it is not just spectrum allocation, administrative spectrum allocation, sectoral regulator try looking into it. Also, you might be aware that the telecom tariffs in this country are under forbearance. So TRAI doesn't have a direct say. It's more or less competition which decides. But then TRAI sort of gives a direction that this is how the charges ought to be. That is one part of the story. The second piece, and I think that is crucial, is for Starlink to obtain the security clearances from the Ministry of Home Affairs. I'm given to understand that Ministry of Home Affairs is currently vetting Starlink's paper. Then there is a DPIIT regulation, Press Note 3, which came out a couple of years back during COVID times, which requires any investor, specifically in sensitive sectors like telecommunications or communication services, to give complete details of their board, the constitution of the board, nationality. Basically, what DPIIT wants to understand, DPIIT is the Department for Promotion of Industrial Internal Investment and Trade, which is a part of the Commerce Ministry. So DPIIT is will try to take a look at what is the ownership, who are the board of directors, in order to ensure that none of this money or none of the investors have close links with any country with which India shares land borders. In this case, it would be China, which they are worried about. That's one part. That's
Okay.
one other regulatory framework that one needs to look at. Third, all these equipment, because all the telecom equipment that is put in any network has to go through a mandatory security and regulatory compliance testing done in Indian labs. The scheme is called MTCTE and it is administered by TEC. Also, there is something called NCCS, which basically looks into security compliances. And I did look at one of the circulars which had come out a few days back, which also mandates that any satellite communication equipment also has to go through the MTCT process. That process by itself is a 9 months to 1 year process, and that would be another regulatory hurdle. Then there are data localization requirements because it is all sensitive data. Then there are requirements that you cannot offer services in border areas, the width of which has to be decided by Government of India. So there are a bunch of these regulatory framework or quagmires one has to negotiate before.
All right, and let's assume that these regulatory challenges and hurdles will be successfully crossed over by both Reliance as well as Airtel. Can we now assume price wars will only intensify? The game is now shifting to pure price wars, and how does it really pan out eventually? Does the customer stand to gain more, or with Elon Musk entering and tying up with both Jio and Airtel, what does it really mean for the customers in India? What does it mean as far as competitive pricing is concerned? Is it going to be cheaper, more expensive going forward, given that Reliance Jio will of course want to have one-upmanship over Airtel when it comes to satellite internet?
First one, as far as I understand, and I'm looking at the situation currently, it looks like that this is not a retail offering. They are trying to offer it at enterprise level, and also trying to connect the remote areas, specifically in the eastern part of the country, in the sub-Himalayan regions, where terrestrial network connectivity is extremely poor. Now, Government of India, because it is one of the largest, and Government of India pushes Digital India as one of its key missions. So if Government of India subsidizes some of these services for providing remote access in or even in, let's say, in Naxalite areas in Chhattisgarh and some other parts of the country, then it could be a success. I'll just give you a statistic. The last time Starlink was offering services in the country when they had started in 21, the approximate cost of the equipment, just the hardware equipment, was around between 25 to 35,000, which is on the higher side, if you ask me. And the cost of service per month was between 4,000 to 7,000 rupees. Now, that's a little bit on the higher side, and I don't think that any retail customer in this country is willing to pay that much money for a high-speed internet. But it would be the enterprises, schools, colleges, hospitals, as was mentioned in the press releases that we have seen coming out from Airtel as well as from Jio, and the statements made by SpaceX itself. So it will be an interesting space to watch out for, and how do they in the back end also tie up with the government. Perhaps I wouldn't, I mean, even the USOF fund, the Universal Services Fund, may be diverted for providing access or subsidizing some of these satellite services. After all, USOF is meant to be used for those purposes, and Airtel, Jio have already paid are already paying that kind of money to the government as a percentage every year to the USO. They contribute to the USO fund. So let's see, it would be an interesting space, but as of now, I don't see that it would be a retail offering.
Before I let you go, thank you for clarifying it's not going to be a retail offering, so perhaps customers like you and me will not stand to gain just as yet. But before I let you go, I have to ask you, for the longest time now, we've seen domestic players really pushing back when it comes to satellite internet, especially one offered by Starlink, and how they will lose out the competitive edge. Now, with Elon Musk tying up with both Airtel as well as Jio, I believe he's the one who stands to gain in the entire process.
Well, let's say that there is geopolitics also at play, and and everybody knows that Mr. Musk is currently if not the most powerful, but the second most powerful planet, human being on this entire planet. So let's wait for how things pan out.
All right. Thank you very much for all those details. Kumardeep, thank you for joining us on the show.